Hi everybody, this is Leah Fresh Astrology. I'm going to talk about Aries and the strengths of Aries. We'll talk some about the challenges, but often the challenges are things you can turn into strengths. And even the strengths can turn into challenges. So don't think that I'm not covering the whole picture, but it's all in how you frame it, as you'll see. So before we get started, if you want to email me with questions, you can find me at freshastrology@gmx.com. You can purchase a reading or a coaching session or a spot, and I think I only have one class still open in January. I have a sale going on right now, but in 2019, January, I have a class on the blending of coaching and astrology. So if you do readings for yourself or for others, or you want to learn astrology and you want to incorporate a coaching perspective, I'm going to teach you how to do that. You do not have to know much about astrology to take this course. I've been asked that a lot. You need to know what astrology is, and you need to be familiar with the names of the signs of the zodiac. You need to maybe understand that there are these things called houses on a chart. I think if you just understand the basics, but you don't have to know astrology, because really what I'm going to teach you is how to use the coaching approach. So you're really learning how to coach in this class. It's online once a week starting in January. It goes through the beginning of February, but go to www.freshastrology.com to sign up. I only have a few slots left, and the other classes have filled up. What else? If you're a woman over 40 and you want support in your, just as a businesswoman, if you have a business or if you want to have a business, then go to my other business website, which is www.tribetripsandretreats.com, and I'll have all these links below. All right, let's get going, Aries. So, what is it with Aries? How do we describe an Aries? What you typically hear is Aries is the ram, is like a ram, and loves to start things, very physical, very energized, a fire sign. So that speaks to that kind of physical passion and also the passion to do things. Aries are doers. They don't like to sit around a lot. They will sit around. They're usually good readers. They love to read, but they're not just sitting. They like to be doing. Like they could sit and read, or they could sit and be on their phone. Although a lot of people are displaying that lately, but they're very comfortable with a busy schedule and just on the go doing a bunch of different things. So they're great at scheduling events, they're great at running events, they're great at, coordinating a busy schedule usually. Now, you will have Aries who have other prominent zodiac signs featured in their chart. So on the day they were born, another sign might be featured that has different qualities. So you'll have Aries who may not seem exactly like that, but it's because maybe they have a moon sign that's something else, or a rising sign that's something else. But typically, when I think of all the Aries I've ever met, the ones I know well, they are quite energized, and they love to stay on the go with a lot of different comings and goings, and they're very comfortable with that. And you'll find they don't love just sitting around. They tend to get irritated by just hanging out a little too much. I think on a trip they like to have a purpose, and they like to go see things and do things. They can veg out, with a cocktail by the ocean or pool, but they generally like to get up after a while and go do something. And they love a good trip with a purpose, where you could go do something. So usually that I find that's true, that personal energy. And the irritation, the flip side is the irritation with waiting or sitting around too much, or the feeling like they can't go do something. That's where an Aries will tend to get a little, like that irritation will start to flare up, that fire from Aries. That's what gets under Aries skin. Aries is impatient with people who are very cautious and who don't like to just get up and go or start something, because Aries are good starters. They're willing to try new things. And they'll get very quickly impatient with somebody who holds back and doesn't have that same skill set. So they'll tend to get irritated around that. I find that Aries, even though they're represented, the sign Aries is represented by Mars, which is characterized by the god of war. I find that Aries, even though they can have a temper, there's just this huge capacity to want to help and do good. I really see that in most of the Aries I know, well enough to know that that would be true about them. And so you have to believe that along with that god of warfare, there's also maybe the motivation behind it, or there's more around that. Because why does like the average citizen go to war for his or her country? They want to help. They want to defend who they love. They want to defend their family. They want to create what they think of as good in the world. Now, other people might disagree with that army or that country and their motives, but the average, if you live in a free country where you can choose, or a quasi-free country, you're usually choosing to go into service. And so if you're going into something like the military and you're going off to fight, perhaps to the point of war, that motivation underneath that can often be quite good, bizarrely. And I know that seems counterintuitive. If you just think of war, it just sounds ugly and deadly and hurtful and scarring and sometimes pointless. But many individuals who are involved in something like a war or even a skirmish feel like they're defending the right thing. And I think you'll find with Aries that they have this strong sense of protecting and defending their loved ones, their friends, concepts, but usually more so than concepts. They're not highly idealistic. They have ideals and they have philosophies, but they're really motivated most by the people around them and the people they care about, whether it's just their family and friends or something larger like their town or their country. They're really thinking of individuals and people, and they have this strong desire to protect and defend. So it's important to understand that about yourself as an Aries. If you have a quick temper, it's important to understand your motivations, and because sometimes when we think we have to protect and defend, we may not be exact. That doesn't mean we're right. It doesn't mean that that flash and that impulse to do that is the best thing in that instance. Sometimes it's not the best thing, and sometimes you can shoot yourself in the foot and do the opposite of protect and defend because you're so impulsive to do that, because it's a part of your quick nature. So only when you understand that there's a motivation underneath that goes back to some core beliefs that you have, you can question those beliefs in that moment, or at least understand what your beliefs, those deep beliefs that would, if triggered, cause you to jump into kind of a fight mode. So you've got to understand kind of what makes you tick, what's underneath that, because I just painted a picture where it sounds quite noble, to protect and defend the people you love, and it can be quite noble. At the same time, if we're not actually in a war, and you don't want to be in a war, there are other ways to do things, and there are other ways to see things. And so that's where an Aries sometimes has some work to do, is to learn how to step back and to see more than one side, see more than two sides, and to give him or herself some time to, by stepping back a minute, giving him or herself some time to calm down. And when you have an Aries who can do that effectively, you've got a really wise person. That's somebody who's done a lot of work. And so if you're an Aries, the personal work to do is really, mindfulness work. I'm probably going to recommend that for everybody. I always do. But for Aries, it's the mindfulness that allows you to step back and not be so impulsive, to assume things, to jump to conclusions, to kind of verbally slap someone down. Sometimes you're just a little too quick to jump in and assume. Because what I notice when Aries are in conversations is that even if they think someone's even thinking about maybe the possibility of saying something against an Aries loved one or friend, or just somebody Aries cares about, Aries, before that person even gets to the point of really attacking, maybe they weren't even gonna attack. Even if an Aries just has like the little antenna go up that thinks maybe it knows already, he or she knows already that something's coming, they'll be so on the offensive that they create a situation where there didn't need to be one. I don't know if you follow what I'm saying, but so they're very hair trigger, like sometimes just so quick that maybe the person they're talking to wasn't even gonna say what the Aries thought they were gonna say. I think that's how quick and fiery an Aries is. So I'm going to just kind of contemplate this Hero card, because what I'm looking at is more of an old wise man, which is the way I think a fully evolved Aries is, like an old wise woman or man who can see all sides and can pause and breathe and therefore be more wise and even impart more wisdom on his or her journey as he or she goes on the path of life and through their own hero saga. But this is someone, I think, when the Aries can really learn to take a few moments to breathe, look at more sides than just their side, look at all the possibilities, that person not only is going to walk a wiser path, but they will be kind of a beacon. People will see them as wise, and they'll help people along the way. There's also this thing with animals and being outside. If you think of the ram and the fact that this particular sign is characterized by an animal, which lives in the great out of doors. And I think of the Aries, I know they love fresh air, being outside. So they're, even though they're not an earth sign, they have this earthy quality. And all the signs have characteristics from other sign types. So we think of Aries as a fire sign, but there are definitely earthy qualities here. Not so much watery qualities, but I definitely see earthy qualities in an Aries. They tend to like having plants or having lots of windows so they can see plants outside, even if they themselves don't have a green thumb. But a lot of Aries I know, even if they don't think they have a green thumb, they tend to bring in nature or go out. They like their patios and porches and balconies. They like somehow being merged with the out of doors. They don't tend to be the people who just seal themselves off and never go outside. And there is this thing with animals. I think there's like a simpatico. The Aries would tend to, they don't all have to, but they would tend to have pets. But again, there are going to be many exceptions, but they do have a love of animals in the great outdoors. On a spiritual level, an Aries is here to learn some degree of patience. That doesn't sound very fun, especially to an Aries, but it's really not patience just so you can prove you're patient. It's really the wisdom of when there's that impulse to jump in, to learn to just, even if for a split second, detach from the impulse and breathe. And you can, after you're practiced at it, you don't have to wait a long time. But it's just the willingness to wait, the willingness to stop oneself, the willingness not to be so impulsive, especially when it comes to something like warfare. When you have an Aries who can do that, you've got a very wise person. And you're here to, once you grasp that and can practice it, when you do it, it tends to be a more powerful lesson for the rest of us. So I'm just going to repeat that. A lot of the signs can do this, and it's very admirable to be able to stop impulsivity, especially when confronting something that could lead to turmoil or war or just a fight with a person, one-on-one. A lot of people can develop or have this ability to stop that impulse. But when Aries can master this, it's very, very powerful. People really kind of take notice of Aries people when Aries people can do this. It's more powerful. It's more like the lesson you're here to demonstrate. It doesn't have to be like your life path or have anything to do, it doesn't have to have anything to do with what you do for a living, but how you go into the world, no matter what you're doing. When you demonstrate that ability to pause and breathe and observe all the sides, it's just, the lesson becomes 100 times more powerful for the people around you. So that's the bigger goal and path that an Aries walks, and that's why we have you. Because when you have that ability, and there actually needs to be some kind of offensive or defensive action. If you have Aries people who have mastered their impulsivity and their tempers, in charge of that, you've got some really powerful warriors too. And it can take a lifetime to really perfect this. It's not an easy path for an Aries to walk to learn all this, but I certainly know Aries who have mastered this, and it is very powerful. When those people can stop themselves and be calm, when otherwise they fire off, it's just it is just magnified, and it's almost like a karmic lesson for everyone around that person, and they really get it for some reason when an Aries does this. So my Aries friends, there's just a little bit more to exploring your character, and I wish you happy holidays and a happy new year.